And then everybody look at your chat. I just put the link to our YouTube channel. We have our own YouTube channel. I just always think that's so cool. So last night's class has already been uploaded to it. When we finish tonight, I'll put it in next week, so on and so on. So after every class, I'll put in, guys, you probably won't, I know you're not going to see it right after class because Zoom has to process it and then YouTube has to upload it. And I don't know what, I know upload and download are two different things. And I know that that takes a little bit longer. So I'll try to get it started before I go to bed in the evenings. So you guys should have it in the morning when you wake up. I let it process overnight. That's typically my goal, and that's what I try to do. So hopefully when you wake up in the morning, you'll have last night's recording. So once you click on the link or copy and paste, whatever, why don't you guys go ahead and bookmark it or subscribe to it? You know, some way, somehow save it so you can come back to it, some way save it so you can know where to reference it. You may not need it this week, but we'll get to some more complicated material like Unit 7. And you may say, oh gosh, I want that YouTube channel. So just because you may not want it or need it right now, doesn't mean you may not need it somewhere down the road. Did anybody not see the link? Did anybody not get that? Should be able to click on it or copy and paste. Okay. So, okay, so let me try to put it in the chat again. You might have been coming on. If you missed attendance, make sure I know you're here so I can give you credit. And here it is again. Let me know if you got it this time. I think that was Natasha that didn't get it. Yeah. So where is Natasha? Got it. Cool. All right. All right. Our very own YouTube channel. Keep adding to it. By the time we get to the end, guess what? You'll have the entire class. When you're preparing for the end of class exam, when you're preparing for your state exam, you'll have the entire class and everything that you need in that channel. So between that, Learn, Test, Pass, I mean, that's in your book. I mean, I think those are some pretty good resources that we got for you guys to help you be successful and help you succeed. Before we actually get started, I want to take just a few minutes. Let's see, first off, don't forget your homework assignment, an introduction, a selfie, your textbook. For those of you that have already done it, thank you. It's been nice meeting you. If you haven't done it yet, sent me a selfie with your book and introduction to yourself. Please do so this weekend so we can put that behind us and move on. So make yourself a note. Who can remind me in the chat? Let's test your memory. Who can remind me in the chat from yet last night? What's the maximum amount of time you're allowed to miss? What's the maximum hours you're allowed to miss in this class and still be eligible? Dang, some of you are ready for me. Did y'all know I was going to ask that? Yeah, you guys are spot on. 15 hours is the most you can miss. Guys, I cannot tell you how many times we are the class or two away from the test. You've missed 13 hours and then an emergency happens and you have to miss class. And guess what that does? That puts you over. So please, please, please don't miss unless you absolutely have to. I always say if you're missing 12, 13 hours, you're missing a lot. We cover a lot. And if you're missing that much, that's a lot. So please try to be here as much as you can. So in the event of emergency, because things do happen. So 15 hours are the max. And remember, guys, there are no allowable excuses. You don't even have to tell me why you're not here. It doesn't matter. If you're not here, it counts against your time. Okay, that's not my rule. That's not Lane's rule. That's the North Carolina Real Estate Commission's rule. So there's nothing we can do about that. Okay, everybody good with that? Make sure we're all same page. Everybody getting a distraction-free zone. Find a little space in your house where you can be left alone, where you can just listen. You turn the TV off, radio, all that. Put your phone down. Everybody good with that? Focus, focus. We're going to start getting into heavier stuff tonight, next week, and so on. We just go from here. So please hang in there with me. Before we jump back into Unit 2, I just want to take a few minutes. As promised, I talked about how we want to talk about how we can try to interpret some of these test questions, how we can navigate our way through them. So if you guys will turn with me to page 17. So page 17 in your textbook. And I just want to have a conversation with you guys. Now, Unit 1, is pretty simple, pretty basic, right? As we go on, we're going to expand. As we go on, you're going to see these test questions get a little longer and a little longer and a little longer. I mean, you could have test questions, one questions that, this big, it's a whole paragraph. So we need to make sure that we're good with interpreting the test questions, that we know how to read them. First off, I'll tell you guys, every single word in the question means something. Every single word in the answer means something. Please don't gloss over it. Please don't skim over stuff. If you skip a word, you're skipping something. So every single word means something. Once we get further in depth in this material, you guys are going to start seeing that some of your test questions have distractors. A distractor is information that doesn't apply. It's not relevant to the test question. What's a distractor's job? To distract you, right? What is it trying to do? It's trying to throw you off track. It's trying to throw you off. So how do we avoid distractors? Always stay focused on what the question's asking you. Always stay focused on what this question asking you. That's your goal. That's what you want to drive towards, is what is that ultimate question asking you? I think one way that I like to read these test questions, A, B, C, and D. Here's the good news. Your questions for my end of class exam and your state exam are all multiple choice. Everything is multiple choice, A, B, C, or D. There's no essay, there's no fill in the blank, there's no true or false. So A, B, C, or D, where are my Vegas people? Who likes your odds? So A, B, C, and D, you start with what? A 25% chance of getting it right. Even if you guess, you have a 25% chance. When you read these test questions, you can almost always rule one out right away. So if you can rule an answer out right away, you've just increased your odds, right? You've gone from a 25% chance to a 33% chance. If you can rule out another, now you're at a 50% chance. Do we like those odds better than a 25% chance? So by looking at these answers, you might be able, oh, there's no way that the answer is B, for example. So you might be able to rule one out. You may have a good answer. You may have several good answers. What you're looking for is the best answer. Okay. And what makes a good answer and a best answer different? It usually comes down to one word that changes, that may, that's a different in a good answer or best answer. What did I hear somebody tell me once? You're looking for the least wrong answer. You're looking for the least wrong answer. Are they tricky? Yes. Is that on purpose? Yes. The commission wants to know that you know the information. They want to know that you can properly answer these questions and properly deal with their public. So one way I like to, if we look at number 7 on page 17 together, one way that I like to tackle test questions is to treat each answer independently. So we're going to read the question and then we're going to read A, and we're going to determine if A is true or false. And then we're going to do it with B and C and D. So by the time we get done, I've labeled A, B, C, and D true and false, which means by the time I get done, I have either 3 trues and 1 false, or 3 falses and 1 true, right? I'm looking for the odd man out here. So if we look at number 7 together, a theater or hotel will be classified under the real estate category of, is a theater or hotel residential? A, no, I don't think that would be considered residential. So I'm going to call A false. Okay, theater or hotel will be classified under the real estate category of commercial. Well, that's a pretty good answer, but don't get excited and write down B. We need to also study C and D and make sure we don't have a better answer. So far we like B, but let's look at the others and see what we got. Theater or hotel will be classified under the real estate category of agricultural. Well, I've yet to see a movie theater farm out there somewhere, right? So I'm going to call that false. And then lastly, a theater or hotel will be classified under the real estate category of industrial. I don't think a movie theater or a theater would be a warehouse, would be a factory. So you guys see what we did? I studied each answer as it relates to the question. So now that we've gone through it, I've determined that A is false, B is true, C is false, and D is false. So what's my answer? My answer is B. I dissected the question. I'll stay and focus on what's the question asking me, because that's all I care about is what this question is asking me. And I dissected it and I studied each answer as it relates to the question. Now, again, I know you guys are sitting there going, oh gosh, Julia, wait until we get further. I'm trying to form some good habits. I'm trying to develop some good habits now. So when we do get into some of this more complicated stuff, you guys will have practice and you'll have some experience. Let's look at number 9, another type of question you may see too. 9 has some Roman numerals. Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2. I used to hate these questions. Yeah, I hate the word hate, but I used to hate these questions until somebody explained to me, how do you read them? How do we read them? Well, again, we treat the Roman numerals independently. So the designation realtor refers to Roman numeral 1, any licensed real estate broker. Do your head one way or another. Is that true? Is the designation realtor a licensed broker? No, you're a broker. Once you're a broker, then you become a realtor. So I've called Roman numeral 1 false, which means I can automatically rule out A and C. You guys see what I did there? By just studying that Roman numeral, I ruled out. Now I got, where's our Vegas odds? Now I know I'm down to just 2, B and D. I got a 50% chance. The designation realtor refers to any active member of the National Association of Realtors. True or false? And that is true. So what's my answer? My answer for this one's going to be B. I think when you guys are taking these quizzes at the end of the units, and when you guys are taking quizzes and learn, test, pass, I think you guys should be treating these like real tests, like pretend that it's test day. Sit down and take this quiz at the end of unit 1 like it's a real test. And a little bit later in class tonight, we're going to talk about how you can grade yourself and how you can see if you pass. So if you fail the quiz at the end of unit 1, what should that tell you? I see you guys talking, and yes, you're right. That should tell you that you should go back and study unit 1 again. If you can't pass the end of unit quiz, my question to you is, how are you going to pass the end of class exam and the state exam? Does that make sense to everybody? I think something else you guys can do to help yourself, both of your tests are timed. The end of class and the state exam is timed. I think you can start now by working with a clock, because your end of class, your 2 tests are timed. So start now by working with a clock. I think on average, if you allow 2 minutes per question. So if you were sitting down right now to take the unit 1 quiz, unit 1 quiz has what, 20 questions? 20 times 2 is 40. So if you were sitting down right now, set the timer on your phone for 40 minutes and practice now working with the clock. If you blow through the whole thing in 10 minutes and fail, what should that tell you? You have time. Slow down. If you can't finish it in 40 minutes, you need to speed up again. Start gauging yourself there. Test taking is nerve-wracking. Agree? I mean, I've never met anybody that go, oh, good, a test. I mean, it's a very nervous. So if we can start practicing now, I mean, we got a couple months to, work through these end of unit quizzes, work through learn, test, pass. and treat them all like it's the big dance. Treat them all like you're sitting down on our last class to take that exam. Like I said, later on tonight, I'll talk about how you guys can grade yourselves. And if you're not passing the end of class or the end of unit exam, maybe we need to go back and study that. Go back and watch the recording. Go back and look at the material in the book. Questions or comments? I did want to as well. This is my fault. I forgot to mention this last night. So let me make sure we get this taken care of. I'm going to put the link to Learn, Test, Pass, or maybe I did mention it. I don't know. I'm going to put the link to Learn, Test, Pass in the chat again. We used this last night to set up your account, but this is what you're going to use to access it every time. So whenever you want to log on, this is the link. So bookmark it, somehow save it. I do suggest that you guys log out and log in each time, because if I make a change to it, I want you to see that change. And if you don't log out, if you want to keep it up, it may not pick up on my change. So you can access it through that link, if I didn't say that last night. Okay. I see a hand. Yeah, Clara.
Yes. Hi. Is the licensing exam in person or online?
So my end of class exam is online. Your state exam, you have a choice. You can either go in person or online. And we'll talk about that later. That halfway through-ish is when we'll talk about your state exam a little bit more, because you got to do an application and all that stuff. But it's way too early to do any of that now. So mine is online. State exam, you have a choice. We like choices, don't we? Okay. Anything else right now so far before we jump back in? Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. And when we last left each other last night, we were talking about fixtures. And I believe the last thing we did was look at a picture. Is that right? Head nods. Okay, good. So we left and we were talking about things, you know, when you're showing this home to the buyer and the buyer turns around and looks at you and says, if I buy this house, what's going to stay in this kitchen? So we talked about the importance of understanding what's real property and what's personal property. That conversation is referring to fixtures in residential. There's a couple other types of fixtures that we need to address, we need to discuss. So another type of fixture is something called a trade fixture. A trade fixture is what the commercial tenant uses to conduct their business, to conduct their trade, if you will. So think about restaurants, think about retail stores with racks, shelves. Trade fixtures are an exception to the fixture rule. The commercial tenant, anything they bring in to conduct their trade is their personal property, which means at the end of the lease, they can take it with them. When their lease is over, they can take their trade fixtures with them. They have to repair any damage caused to the building by removing them, right? They just can't rip something out of the wall, leave a big hole in the wall, and then say, okay, I'm done. They have to repair any damage that removing their fixtures. But the tenant is allowed to bring, the commercial tenant is allowed to bring these fixtures in, conduct their trade. At the end of the lease, they can take them with them. If for some reason they don't take them, then those items become personal property. I'm sorry, real property, excuse me, real property of the landlord. So for some reason the tenant doesn't take them or make arrangements to come back for them, At the end of the lease, they become real property of the landlord. One thing I noticed around High Point, a couple places around High Point, and I'm sure other places as well, we lost a lot of Rite Aids, about 2 years ago? A lot of Rite Aids closed their doors. And you know, one thing I noticed is they had signs up saying racks for sale, shelves for sale. Did anybody else see this? Did anybody else notice that? It kind of tells me that the tenant left their fixtures, the tenant left their shelves and their racks, and now the owner of the building is trying to get rid of them so they can release it, re-rent it. So again, if it's something that the commercial tenant brings in to conduct their trade, at the end of the lease, they can take them with, repairing any damage caused by removal. So you guys get your chats ready. Me too. Let's look at another picture. Here's our residential commercial, our commercial kitchen. That's what I want to say, commercial kitchen. What are some things that could be or probably considered trade fixtures? What are some things in this picture that the commercial tenant can take with them? Yeah, that big hood vent. Look at that monster. The stove, the oven, the fryers, this device down here. Somehow these are attached so that they're not falling down. They're not falling over, right? Are they nailed? Are they bolted into the wall, onto the floor? I don't know. But somehow they're attached. So the tenant brought it in for their restaurant business. At the end of the lease, they can take them with them. The shelving, that's right. The counters, again, these all have to be attached in a way that they're not falling on people. They're not hurting on people. So the end of the lease, when the tenant moves out, this room's going to look pretty bare, isn't it? Because they're going to take, somebody said their pots and pans, of course, they're going to take all their stuff out of it. And this room is going to look pretty bare because most of this stuff looks like items that the tenant would use to conduct their trade. So trade fixtures are a separate category, a separate class of fixtures. Another separate class of fixtures that we have in North Carolina is agricultural fixtures. Anything that the tenant farmer brings in to conduct their business, the tenant farmer, that automatically becomes real property of the landlord. Can the parties agree otherwise? Can the parties agree to let the tenant take them with them afterwards? Of course they can. Why? Because anything's negotiable. So unless the parties agree that the tenant can remove them afterwards, after the lease, items attached to the tenant farmer become real property of the landlord. Once they're there, they are there. And when the tenant leaves, unless we have special arrangements, when the tenant leaves, they're going to leave their agricultural fixtures behind. We'll get another picture together. Y'all ready to go? Oh, here we go. Oh, who doesn't love goats? I want a goat. This goat is hanging out in his feeding trough. Now, this feeding trough has got to be secured in a way that it's not falling over, right? Somehow that feeding trough is attached to the ground. What about that fence? If the tenant farmer brought these items in and attached them, dug holes in the ground and dug the feeding trough and installed the fence, at the end of the lease, unless there's special arrangements, unless there's other arrangements made, the tenant farmer will have to leave those behind. Any questions about fixtures? Let's see. I got a couple. Veronica, I saw you first.
So I got caught up yesterday. I was doing the flashcards in Learn, Test, Pass. Mm-hmm. And when I got to this section, it mentioned about having a listing where the seller was including the appliances. And then I guess the offer was to buy the listing or buy the property, but they didn't mention the appliances. So then it asked, is that seller obligated to include the appliances? And I put yes, because thinking that he's selling it as included, and that was wrong. So that confused me last night.
So, and we're going to talk more about that when we look specifically at our offer to purchase and contract. So in some places, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but to your point, Veronica, remember yesterday, for example, we talked about the refrigerator. The refrigerator is not considered a fixture. The refrigerator is considered personal property. The seller can advertise the refrigerator. The seller can say the refrigerator is going to stay. The buyer can say, great, I want the refrigerator. They can come to verbal agreement. But contract law says if the refrigerator is not included as personal property in the contract, then the seller's not bound to leave it. So we can have a handshake, we can have a verbal agreement on it, but none of that means nothing if it doesn't make it to the offer to purchase and contract. Unit 9 is our basic contract law. So we'll talk about that. Something called the parole evidence rule. Don't write that down. We'll talk about it in Unit 9. But yeah, and that's, I know sometimes they're talking about things that we haven't talked about yet. You know, it's hard to, I wish I could open my mouth and let it all fall out.
And I think it confused me just because we were talking about real property, personal property. And so it threw me off.
Sure. And a lot, we'll get you, once we get further along, we'll get you some further knowledge, and you'll be better equipped to answer some of those questions. So again, if you have verbal, you have nothing.
Okay.
Why don't y'all write that down? If you got verbal, you got nothing. Okay, and then Clara had a question.
The agricultural fixture example seemed to be for a tenant type of situation. Do those rules also apply for a sale?
Yes. The reason, whoa, Julie, what are you doing? The reason that, because if it's a sale, then it's real property, right? It's included. The reason that we're particularly pulling these out, because these are the things that the tenant farmer is bringing in. So the sale is going to include all fixtures, right? What makes these different is that the tenant brought these in. And what we need to understand is that the tenant will have to leave them because they become real property of the landlord. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you guys will lower your hands so I don't ask you like every 3 minutes. Is that a new question? Do you guys see how to do that? However you rate, there you go. Thank you. Because I know me, I'll come back to the screen in a few minutes and I'll be like, uh-oh. So save us all some time. Okay. Last night, we kind of briefly mentioned there are laws out there that protect personal property as well. And that law for personal property is the North Carolina Uniform Commercial Code. If you lease it and don't own it, it's not yours yet. You can't sell it if it's not yours, right? So let's say you purchase, for example, a water heater, and you buy it on credit and you give the purchaser a credit security agreement. This is not you putting it on your Lowe's credit card. This is you providing a security agreement to the water heater guy. So you buy it on credit, you give the creditor a security agreement. That water heater remains personal property until it's paid in full. It's not yours until it's paid. The creditor will record the security agreement. When we get to Unit 5, we're going to talk about all why we record. But basically, the reason we put things on record is to give notice, is to let the world know this is not the owner's water heater. It doesn't convey. It's not theirs to sell. So all personal property items bought on credit with a security agreement are covered under the North Carolina Uniform Commercial Code. Also with real property and personal property, we have factory built manufactured homes. Manufactured homes are built according to HUD standards. HUD is the Housing of Urban Development. Factory homes may be personal property, they may be real property, it depends. If the manufactured home is still on wheels, if it has a hitch, if it still is titled, has a VIN number with the Department of Motor Vehicles, it's still considered personal property because it's on wheels. It has a hitch. All you got to do is hook it up to a truck and drive it out of here, right? You can convert a manufactured home by putting on a permanent foundation, removing the hitch, and canceling the title with the DMV. So is a manufactured home considered personal property or real property? It depends. It depends. Is it still on wheels? Does it have a hitch? Does it have the title by the DMV? Then it's considered personal property. Once you put it on a foundation, you cancel that title with the DMV. Now it becomes real property. So those are manufactured homes. We also have modular housing. Modular homes are built off-site in sections. They're built like room by room in a factory somewhere, maybe story by story, floor by floor. They come in big sections on the back of a truck. Once the builder assembles them on site, then they become real property. So modular housing is factory built. It's built to state building codes. Have you guys ever been driving down the road? Seen like half a house? It's probably what we're doing here. We're probably, hopefully the other half isn't too far behind. So modular housings are built in sections off site. Once they're assembled on site, they become real property. I'm going to go back for 1 second. The manufactured home, the HUD sticker, just FYI, the HUD sticker is usually found when you open the cabinets underneath the kitchen sink. You can usually see the HUD sticker to let you know that it's a manufactured home. The modified home or the modular home has a state inspection label, has a serial number, can usually be found somewhere in the back of the house. So if you're not sure, if you're never not sure if it's manufactured or modular, look for your sticker. That's just an FYI, by the way. Any questions so far? Yeah.
Yeah, Jules. So you're actually saying the HUD sticker will say manufactured or modular, or the HUD sticker?
I don't know exactly what the sticker says, but it'll tell you that it was built to HUD standards.
Okay.
Yep. Like I said, it's the cabinet doors. Usually you're going to find it, the cabinet doors under the kitchen sink. A HUD certification label. Section 2 is kind of choppy, so I'm getting ready to switch gears just a bit. But before we switch gears, I just want to make sure we're good with, we've talked a lot about real property, personal property, fixtures, trade fixtures, agricultural fixtures. Just want to make sure we're good with everything so far before we switch gears. We're ready to switch gears. Cool. So switch gears. Let's talk about estates in real property. An estate is the amount and kind of interest that an individual has in the real property. It's what degree they own it, what extent they hold their interest. When you guys see estate, one word should come to mind. An estate is a homeowner's interest. What kind of interest, what type of interest do they have in the property? So an estate is an interest. And we basically have two types of estates. There's an estate of ownership, also known as a freehold estate. There's a state of possession, also known as a leasehold estate. You don't own it, but you rent it, thus you have permission to be there. You can possess the property. Now we're going to talk about our leasehold estates in Unit 11. So put that off to the side for right now. And right now we're just going to focus on freehold estates. We're going to talk about interest estates that you own. You guys like pictures? I like pictures. Everybody look in your book with me, please, on page 29. Basically, our freehold estates can be broken down into two categories. Freehold estates are either inheritable or they're not. What does it mean if something's inheritable? It means when you pass away, that interest can pass to your heirs, right? You can put some heirs in your will and you can say where you want your interest to go. So when we talk about estates, when we talk about freehold estates or ownership estates, estates are either inheritable or they're not. The first type of freehold estate is our fee simple absolute. This is the one you guys are dealing with. This is the one we're all dealing with like 99% of the time. Don't write that down. I just made that number up. What do we deal with the majority of the time? Fee simple absolute. Fee simple absolute is the highest form of ownership. There's no limitation on ownership other than deed restrictions, zoning, right? The laws still come into play, restrictive covenants. The majority of the time, what we see is fee simple absolute. Everything else under freehold estates that we're getting ready to talk about, if we see we need, the best thing we can do is advise our clients to get with an attorney. Some of this class is teaching you guys just enough to be dangerous. I'm giving you knowledge, I'm giving you material, but I'm saying, don't use it. Guys, a big part of this class is understanding and knowing and staying in my lane. I'm not an attorney. I can't give legal advice. I'm not an appraiser. I can't give you value. I'm not a home inspector. I'm not a surveyor. I'm not a lender. I am just a real estate agent. But our clients rely on us to help them through the transaction. So if we come across a type of estate other than fee simple absolute, we should have a little flag go up in our brain where we're telling our clients, we need to get your attorney involved. I'm not equipped to handle these, what we're getting ready to talk about next. If you want to handle what we're getting ready to talk about next, sign up for law school, become an attorney. So fee simple absolute, what you're going to see most of the time. This is all I've ever seen in my years of sale. This is all I've ever dealt with. Now, that being said, one of you will come out with your license and the very first transaction you have will be, will be one of these other ones. But now you know what to do with it, right? What are you going to do? Tell your client to call their attorney. CYA, call your attorney and cover your assets. You see what I did there? Yeah, Clara.
What would be your first clue that this was not a fee simple absolute property?
The deed.
Okay.
Yep. The deed has to spell out the type. Good question. The deed will spell out the type of ownership, and we'll get into deed and title in Unit 5. Yep. So everybody good with that? Fee simple absolute, what we're going to see. Okay, so what are some other types of freehold estates? We have something called a fee simple defeasible. With a fee simple defeasible, there's a restriction on use. You purchase this property with a restriction on how you can use it. And guys, it's really pretty simple. You break the rules, you lose the property. It's pretty simple. These are deeded rules, so you know those rules when you buy it. Do you have to buy a property with a restriction on it? Of course not. But should you choose to purchase a property with a restriction on it, you know what you're getting yourself into. So fee simple defeasible, also known as a qualified fee estate, is a restriction on use. And there are two types of fee simple defeasible estates. The first type of fee simple defeasible is a fee simple subject to condition subsequent. And what this restriction says is that the owner can use the property for whatever they want, except this one thing. They can do whatever they want, except, for example, serve alcohol. You can do anything else except serve alcohol. The moment you serve one beer, you've broken the rules and you lose the property. Did you buy this property knowing you can't serve alcohol? Of course you did. You break the rules, you lose the property. The grantor is the person that gave you the property, the person that you purchased the property from. So you break the rules, the grantor takes you to court, and the grantor or their heirs, if the grantor is no longer with us, take you to court, the judge rules, and the property goes back to the grantor or their heirs. You broke the rules. Game over. So fee simple subject to condition subsequent. Do whatever you want on this property, except one thing. Another type, the other type of fee simple defeasible is a fee simple determinable. Fee simple determinable says you can only use this property for one thing. You can only use this property for one purpose. So let's say, for example, fee simple determinable deeded states you can only use this property for religious purposes. The moment you do something non-religious on the property, you broke the rules and you lose the property. This time, the grantor doesn't have to go through the courts. The reversion is automatic. It has already been determined what's going to happen when you break the rules. So you use this property for something other than religious purposes, anything other than religious purposes. You broke the rules, you lose the property. So you guys see why I want you calling an attorney? My goodness. So fee simple defeasible, the properties, the estate, the interest has a restriction on use, how you can use the property. So let's look at an example together of one. A grantor, again, the person that's giving the property, deeds the land to a school district that says for as long as the school district maintains a public elementary school on the parcel, and if it ceases to do so, the state shall end immediately. What's the one allowable use? Just one. What's that one allowable use? A public elementary school. Yep, specifically public elementary school. District has a fee simple determinable estate. If at some point the district does not maintain that public elementary school, the title goes back to the grantor, to the person they got the property from, or their heirs if the grantor is no longer with us. I hear a question? Do I have any questions on fee simple defeasible? And there's some good examples in your books. I'll let you guys look at that. I like examples. I like pictures. I like things to help simplify this stuff.
Julie, I have a question.
Yes.
I was curious, would this be the same thing as a covenant, or would it be something different?
It would be something different because this
Okay.
is deeded just for this property. Yep.
Gotcha. And covenants cover like more than one
A
property?
community, a subdivision. That's right. Yep. She's got it. Yep. Okay. So to have everybody so far, a fee simple defeasible is a restriction on use. Either you can only do one thing or you can do whatever you want except for this one thing. Another type of freehold estates that we have are life estates. Life estates are a restriction on time. You're limited on how long you own the property. Life estates are sometimes referred to as partial estates because they do not last forever. They only last for a limited amount of time. And of course, to keep things interesting, oh, am I here? You guys have me? Okay. To keep things interesting, there are several different types of life estates. Be way too boring if not, right? So one first type of life estate is our conventional life estate. A conventional life estate is not inheritable. Conventional life estates cannot be passed down to heirs. A conventional life estate is owned by the life tenant. While the life tenant owns the property, they can do whatever they want to with it. It's their property. But as soon as that life tenant passes away, the estate is over. So as soon as that life tenant passes away, the property either goes back to the grantor or their heirs, or it goes on to a named third party if deeded. If it's spelled out on the deed, at the end of this life estate, it's going to go on to name the third party. So conventional life estate, you own it for your life. The life tenant owns it for their life. And when is it over? It's over when the life tenant passes away. And it either goes back to the grantor or it goes on to a named third party. Another type of life estate is a marital life estate. A marital life estate is also not inheritable. We're going to talk more about married people owning property in just a bit. But marital life estates, if somebody buys property and then gets married, so you own property and then you tie the knot, and then that individual passes away. How much does the spouse get? How much interest does the spouse get? It's determined on how long you were married. The length of marriage determines how much of an interest that you have. This is not referring to married people buying property. Somebody owned property and then got married. The spouse is entitled to something. How much? It depends on how long they were married. So going back to our picture real quick on page 29, those are our two estates that are not inheritable: the conventional life estate and the marital life estate. All the others are inheritable, which means when the individual passes, it goes on to their heirs and so on and so on. Another type of life estate is called a life estate pour autre vie. Do you guys know you're going to learn some French tonight? Pour autre vie is French for the life of another. With a life estate pour autre vie, you have the life tenant that owns the property. How long do they own the property? They own it for as long as the measuring life is alive. There's a third party that's the yardstick to determine how long the life tenant owns the property. The measuring life has no ownership. They have no right. They have no interest. They're simply the yardstick to determine how long the life tenant owns the property. When the measuring life passes away, the life tenant loses the property. It either goes back to the grantor or it goes on to a named third party. There is an example that we're going to look at before we go to break. I like on this on page 33 of your book at the top there. Austin has a fee simple title to a property. He conveys a life estate to his brother Carl for the life of Carl's daughter who has a major disability. How long does Carl own the property? For as long as his daughter is alive. Once his daughter passes away, Carl no longer owns a property. Why did Austin do this? Because he wanted a roof over his niece's head. He wanted to make sure that his niece was cared for and provided for. Carl has the right to enjoy ownership. We're going to talk more about the rights of a life tenant in just a second. But the daughter is the measuring life. Should the daughter die, Carl's estate will terminate and go back to Austin or Austin's heirs. Carl only owns it for his daughter's life. She is the measuring life. Pour autre vie, for life of another. Questions so far? This is deep stuff. I know this is hard to talk about heirs and people passing away, but part of life. Any questions so far? Yeah, Danielle.
Yes, Julie, so I see we're talking about a remainder man. Who exactly gets to choose it? Is it specific?
It's going to be the grantor. And if you'll hold that thought, Danielle, that's the very next slide when we get back from break. So hold that and we'll get to that as soon as we come back. Okay, thank you. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and take break. Let's take 10. When we come back, we're going to talk about this remainder man and reversionary. So let's take 10. Is everybody else trying to scarf dinner down in 10 minutes? That can't be good for us. It's timed. It goes by fast, doesn't it? All right, let's see. If you're back, cameras are on. If you can hear me, make sure your camera's on before I take attendance, so we can make sure to give you credit.
Can you see Carol?
I'm sorry.
Can you see Carol?
Carol. Where is Carol? Yeah, there's Carol. Hey, Carol.
Okay. 'cause
Carol, look up.
I can only see you.
Okay, that's okay.
Okay.
Can you see my screen? That's the important thing, right?
Yes, because you're sharing your screen with me.
Yep.
Okay.
But if you look at your device, you should see a light on. So if you see that light, you know your camera's on. So if you're never not sure, just look for the light. Okay. So let me go ahead, do our screenshots for attendance. I think you guys see a little flash when I do that. And talking about our life estates, we talked about our conventional life estate, our life estate pour out your V for life of another. And when we talk about life estates, as we've been saying, when the life estate is over, it either goes back to the grantor or it goes on to the named third party. Well, these both have actual names. So there's either remainder interest or there's a reversionary interest. The remainder interest is what goes on to the named third party. This person is named in the deed. The deed is clear. It says, when this individual passes away, the property goes on to, and they spell the individual out. If the property is meant to go back, it's called a reversionary interest. You guys see the word reverse there? It reverses back to the original owner, back to the grantor or their heirs if that owner is no longer with us. If there's nobody named in the deed, the default is to go to the reversionary. So if it doesn't say one way or the other, the default is to go back, to revert back, to reverse back to the grantor. Okay. As we said earlier, these life estates, or I'm sorry, these life tenants, the life tenants have rights. Guys, the life tenant owns the property, so they can do whatever they want to with the property, right? The only restriction is on how long they own it. As far as use goes, they do whatever they want to. They can profit from the property. They could rent it to a tenant. They could grow, an orchard and harvest. They can use the resources on the property. They get to pay taxes. They get to maintain the property. Everything that a homeowner gets to do. The only thing they can't do is destroy the property, because there's somebody in line waiting for the property when they're done. So they have the same rights as any other owner. They are the owner. The only restriction is on how long they own it. Real quick, I'm just going to mention, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. On page 34, there's something called a homestead. A homestead is just a legal life estate. If qualified, the homestead is protected from some creditors. Could be a tax advantage in some states. I think what you guys need to know about a homestead, we're going to talk about in Unit 3. So we'll see this again briefly. And if, and I'm stressing the word if, you see a test question on this, I think that test question is going to come from what we talk about in Unit 3. So make a little note, look at it before your exam, but we're not going to get bogged down. I got more important things to talk about. things that I know you will see. Questions on our freehold estate. Freehold estate are types of ownership. Let's see. Diane, I'm lucky I see you because I'm on this page. So if I was on page 2, but since I saw it, yeah, use your virtual hand because that alerts me.
I was
So,
going
yes.
for it. For the life of another estate, does it have to be another human? Like, can a crazy person be like, hey, as long as my cat's alive, or a tree, or I mean, is it specific to a human?
I'm going to say no. The only other thing it could be is possibly an entity, a business, but ownership is only set aside for people and businesses. So if you want a tree to inherit property, you're going to have to call your attorney on that.
Oh
one.
no, I didn't mean the tree inherit. I meant like the thing you're measuring the life from.
I got you. I'm sorry. No, that makes more sense now. Yeah, I mean, it's the property and everything on the property, everything included in the property. Sorry about that. My husband always says he's going to deed our estates to the feral cats of the neighborhood. I'm like, you can't do that. Okay. Everybody good to move away from freehold estates now? Again, I'm getting ready to switch topics again. I'm going to switch gears again. So an estate, one word. What is an estate? An estate is an interest. What type of interest, what kind of interest you own in the property. Let's switch gears again. And let's talk about ownership. What's your ownership in the property? Ownership tells us who holds title, how they're going to take title. Again, I'm going to talk all about title and deed. We'll see that next week in Unit 5. And there are 2 types of ownership. There's severalty and concurrent. Talking about both right now. The easy one is severalty. If you own in severalty, you are the sole owner. Maybe you're an individual person. Maybe you're an entity, a business entity. If you own in severalty, you have severed yourself from all other owners. Last man standing. One man stands alone. One person owns in severalty. The other type is concurrent forms of ownership. Concurrent forms of ownership says 2 people can own it, 2,000 people can own it. There's multiple owners. We're going to talk about all 3. Let me say this first. One thing that all 3 of these have in common is any concurrent owner has the right to access any part of the property. You can't draw a line down the middle of the property and say, this is my half and this is your half, right? It's not the property that we're dividing, it's the ownership interest. Do I have any people on the call that have siblings that grew up sharing a bedroom? Anybody have to share a bedroom growing up with your siblings? I didn't. I'm an only child, so I didn't have to deal with this. But you guys, as I understand from you guys, sometimes you and your siblings would get in these fights and somebody would draw a line down the middle of the room and say, this is my part of the room and this is your part of the room. Don't you come on my half and I won't come on yours. Did you guys ever have those sibling arguments? Probably. You can't do that with concurrent forms of ownership. All owners have the right to access the property. Okay, we're not dividing the property. So that's one thing that they all have in common. So let's break these down, concurrent forms of ownership, and let's talk first about tenancy in common. With tenancy in common, the ownership interest is usually unequal. You don't have equal shares. Could be 2 people, could be 50, doesn't matter. But you have unequal shares, and each owner owns an undivided interest that they can do with it whatever they want to. They can sell it, convey it, mortgage it, transfer it. They don't need permission. They all own their own undivided interest. When a tenant in common passes away, their interest goes to their heirs. That's what their will is for. So when a tenant in common passes away, their ownership interest goes to their heirs. Let's look at a picture. An example. Tenant in common. I got one owner that owns 60%, one that owns 40%. Unequal shares, yes? When 60% passes away, their interest goes to their heirs. 40% still owns 40%, right? That didn't change. We used to have 2 owners, now we have 3. But if one of those people pass away, it goes to their heirs, and so on and so on and so on. Do we see how complicated, how fast this can get complicated? What are you guys going to do? You're going to call somebody. Who are you calling? Calling your attorney. Yep, getting your attorney involved. If you want to know more about this, go to law school. So heirs and heirs is heirs and heirs is heirs is heirs, and so on and so on. Tenancy in common. Unequal ownership. When a tenant in common passes away, their interest goes to their heirs, as stated in their will. Another type of concurrent forms of ownership is joint tenancy. Joint tenancy, the interests are usually equal. 4 owners, every owner owns 25%. Ownership interest is equal. One of the requirements for joint tenants is that all joint tenants have to take title at the same time and appear on the deed at the same time. They all take title all at the same time. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. Right of survivorship. Let's say you have 2 owners, owner A and owner B. What right of survivorship says, if one owner passes away, despite what their will says, right of survivorship says their interest automatically goes to the remaining owner or owners. I don't care what their will says. Right of survivorship says when one passes away, all interest goes to the remaining owners or owner, not their heirs. If you see a question on joint tenancy on the national part of your exam, joint tenancy is automatic. I'm sorry, right of survivorship is automatic. Right of survivorship is automatic. In North Carolina, right of survivorship and joint tenancy is not favored. It has to be added. It has to be created. Don't worry, the attorney's doing this. We are not. But if requested, right of survivorship for joint tenancy in North Carolina, the attorney can create it. They can add that right of survivorship. In just a second, we're going to talk about ownership by married people. Typically, joint tenants are not married. I'll talk about married people in just one second. Let's look at a picture with right of survivorship. With right of survivorship. 2 people buy a home. They own it 50-50. One passes away. All interest goes to the last owner that now owns it in severalty, right? They have severed themselves from the other owner. With right of survivorship. So let's see. Sister and brother purchase a beach cottage, taking title as joint tenants with the right of survivorship. The brother later dies. His interest in the beach cottage automatically passes to his sister, as a surviving joint tenant. She now owns the property in severalty. Brother and sister created joint tenants. A will cannot override joint tenancy. So the brother passes away, despite what his will says, the interest now goes to the sister. One distinction that joint tenancy has that we kind of mentioned, joint tenancy has these 4 required unities. In order to be joint tenants, we have to have these required unities. There's unity of possession. Again, you can't divvy the property up. We're not dividing the property, we're dividing the ownership. So unity of possession, you have unity of interest. Each interest is an equal interest. However many owners you have, everybody has an equal interest. And then unity of time, unity of title says all joint tenants are all there, all at the same time, all taking title, all on the same deed. They're all taking title at the same time. I'm going to talk about next what happens when somebody else comes into the ownership. But with joint tenancy, we have these 4 required, we have these 4 unities, these 4 things. So if property is owned by, let's say, 3 joint tenants, 3 people were there at the same time taking title, and later one of the joint tenants decides to convey their interest, they sell their interest to somebody else, that new guy cannot come in as a joint tenant because the new guy was not there when we took title. So let's say owners A, B, and C all took title all at the same time. They were all at the attorney's office at the same time. They all sat down and signed the deed at the same time. A, B, and C are joint tenants. Okay, all took title all at the same time. One day B wakes up and says, I've had it with you guys. I'm done. I'm selling my property. B conveys his interest to D. D's the new guy, right? D cannot come in as a joint tenant because D was not there originally when they took title. So D comes in as a tenant in common. Did this affect the relationship with A and C? They're still joint tenants, right? They were still there at the same time taking title. So now we have multiple forms of concurrent forms of ownership. What do I want you guys to do? Call your attorney. This just got way out of hand because now we got heirs and we got property going right to survivorship. I mean, we got all sorts of things. You guys see how complicated this can get? There's such a thing as estate lawyers. Do we see now why? We need somebody to specialize in this, how this happens. So in order to be joint tenant, everybody's got to come in and take title at the same time. And if anybody comes in later, they cannot come in as a joint tenant. Any questions on that? Joint tenant. So how tenant in common and joint tenants end? Well, either the owners can sell their portion or all of it, they can sell the whole property, voluntary agreement, or if the court takes the property. So we've talked about tenants in common. We've talked about joint tenancy. The last concurrent form of ownership is set aside for people that are married when they take title. You're married, you buy a house, you're going to be tenancy by the entirety. If you own property before you get married, the act of getting married does not create a tenancy by the entirety. In order to be tenancy by the entirety, the people have to be married when they take title. Everybody with me? If somebody owns property and then gets married, now we have that marital life estate. They could choose to create a tenancy by the entirety. They could do a new deed, have an attorney do up a new deed and create it, but that's done purposely. It's not done automatically. So tenancy by the entirety. They're married when they take title. Yeah, Lexi.
Okay, now you can hear me. So I have a question. So would they be considered joint tenants if they are not married or if they're fiance or whatever at that point in time?
That's a great question, Lexi. And if you're working with unmarried people, let me tell you this. A couple years ago, I worked with a couple buyers. They moved down from New York. He got a job. She decided to come with him. They weren't married. He gave her a choice. I'll give you the ring or the house. She said, oh, I want the house. Are you kidding me? So they come down buying unmarried. Do you think I whipped out my pre-licensing textbook and explained to them how they could take title since they're not married? Everybody shake your head no. I had the attorney explain to them, since they're not married, their choices were to take title by tenants in common or joint tenant, right? They have a choice if they're not married. I connected them with our closing attorney that had a conversation with them. I wasn't privy to, I wasn't on the conversation. I didn't hear that, but it lasted like 10 minutes, if that. And I'm pretty sure it came down to what the attorney said was, when one of you pass away, what do you want to have happen to your interest? Do you want it to go to your heirs or do you want it to go to the other party? So those that are unmarried have options. And that's when we need to have a little flag go up. Guys, I can't offer legal advice. I can't give legal counsel. And telling somebody how to take title is acting legal, is acting like legal counsel. Okay, so if they're not married, we need to know, and this again, just enough to be dangerous. If they're not married when they're buying, then they need to understand they have two options, tenants in common or joint tenancy. Question comes in, what if one spouse is named on the deed? So that's my next segment here. North Carolina is a spousal state, which means it takes one to buy and two to sell. Can you only have one spouse on the deed? Maybe. You could, but you need both to sign to convey the deed. Y'all want to hear the story I heard in pre-licensing? Isn't it funny stories that stick with you? I mean, I got my license in 2008 and I still remember this story. It stuck with me. The story I heard in pre-licensing, gentleman purchases a condo for his mistress. Was his wife on the title? Probably not. One to buy, two to sell. So dude buys a condo. That relationship runs its course and ends, and he thinks he's going to sell the condo. And what did the attorney say? I need your wife's signature to convey this deed. What did dude say? Gulp. Probably uttered some other four-letter words too, right? So now he has choices. He either fesses up and says, honey, I had a mistress that I bought a condo for. Now I need you to sign it so we can sell it. Or, I mean, what? He finds a tenant. I mean, he's kind of out of options. I guess the moral of this story is rent an apartment for your mistress. Don't buy her a condo because it will come back and bite you in the butt. 1 to buy, 2 to sell. So Carol, your question, can you have one deed on, or one spouse on the deed? Yep. But how many do you need to sign to convey it? Both of them. Be smart, guys. Come on. And ladies, I'm not trying to pick on the gentlemen. Everybody, be smart. Yeah, Diane.
You know, what happens if you get a divorce? Like say me and my husband bought a house. He's on the deed, I'm not. We bought it together while we were married. Say we get divorced. Does he still need my signature to sell it?
Yeah, and that'll be handled in your divorce decree, right? That'll all be, so if you guys sell it, or one of you, maybe he wants to convey it to you, or maybe you both just want to be done, you know, get rid of it and be done with it, that'll be handled in your divorce proceedings.
Okay.
Okay. So again, tenancy by the entirety. I owned a condo before I got married. I bought a condo, little condo, and then my husband and I got married. My husband and I, again, the act of getting married does not create the tenancy by the entirety. Okay. Today, we're tenants by the entirety. I chose to create it. I deeded the property from me to us. I chose to create that tenancy by the entirety. But it doesn't happen automatically. Okay. I purposely did it. If I didn't do that, I would still be the only person on the deed, but he still has an interest in the property as a marital life estate, right? How much of the property would he be entitled to if I passed away? It depends on how long we were married. And that's what that marital life estate that we talked about a couple slides ago. With tenancy by the entirety, right of survivorship is automatic. You have 2 people that are married, one passes away, interest automatically goes to the remaining spouse. It does not matter what this person's will says. One person passes away, this interest goes to the remaining spouse that now owns it in severalty. They're the sole owner. Tenancy by the entirety has the same unities that joint tenancy does. Some people will tell you that joint tenancy was meant to mimic ownership for unmarried people. The only big difference between them is either you're married or you're not. And how do you terminate a tenancy by the entirety? Death of one party, divorce, or mutual agreement, i.e., both spouses agree to sell the property.
I know this is kind of like a slippery slope type of question, but could a person transfer the property over, deed it over to like an LLC or something like that before they're married?
Ooh, I don't want to give you too much advice. No, I don't, you know, I'm sure they can. You can, you know, do what you want, but we'd have to get an attorney involved, right?
Okay.
So if I didn't want my husband to be part of that, you're saying before we got married, I turned my condo into an LLC. Yeah, we definitely would have to get an attorney involved to do that. And guys, please understand, with this idea of right of survivorship, I mean, we're not getting into prenups in this class. We're not getting into any of that. Okay. If you want to know more about that, go to law school. So this is just the basic type of ownership. So while engaged, Tom and Nancy purchased a home in Walkertown. If they're engaged, are they married? No. There's only 2 answers to the question, are you married? You're either married or you're not. Yes or no. There is no, it's complicated. So they're engaged, they're close, but they're not married yet. So Tom and Nancy buy a home. They're both named as grantees on the deed, either as joint tenancy or tenancy by the entirety. They marry 1 month later. Because they got married, it does not convert their ownership to a tenancy by the entirety. Why? Because they were not married at the time that they took title. Okay. And let me say this about tenants by the entirety too. Tenants by the entirety is the default for married people. Married people can choose to be joint tenants or tenants in common. Why would they do that? I don't really know. But it's the default. They have options. They could also choose to be tenants in common or joint tenants. So I have, y'all just put your pencil down for a second. This chart is in Learn, Test, Pass for you guys. So I like this because it gives us a nice side-by-side comparison, joint tenants, tenants in common, and tenancy by the entirety. I think this is more beneficial to you guys in a couple months when you're preparing for your exams, when you're studying. I think this will serve as a good refresher of the differences of the two. So when we finish Unit 2 in just a minute, I'll show you where in Learn, Test, Pass you can find this, so you can reference it when you're getting ready for your exam. Questions on concurrent forms of ownership? I'm getting ready to switch gears one more time. I said Unit 2 is just all over the place. Okay. The last big section is about hybrid forms of ownership, common interest communities. The reason they're hybrid forms of ownership is because they contain elements of both ownership and severalty and concurrent forms of ownership. And probably one of the biggest distinguishing characteristics in a hybrid form of ownership is you have some kind of HOA. You have some kind of homeowners association. The homeowners associations own some property. The individuals own some property. Most commonly, what we see with hybrid forms of ownership is residential property. But just keep in mind, you could have commercial hybrid forms of ownership as well, mixed use. Mixed use would be areas that are zoned, for example, commercial and residential. Again, we're going to talk all about zoning in Unit 6. So the first type of hybrid form of ownership that we have is our condominium ownership. Condo owners do not own land. Condo owners own air. Condo owners own from paint to paint, sheetrock to sheetrock, wall to wall, however you want to think about that. They don't own land. They don't own the air above. This is why we stack condos. You got like the first story, second story, third story, fourth story, right? You can have stacked units because all they own is their unit. And in condominium ownership, the common areas are managed by the HOA, but the common areas are owned by the owners who are all in as tenant in common. Why don't you guys tell us in the chat, what are some examples of the common areas? When I say common areas, what are some examples? What comes to mind? What do you think of? The gym, the pool, the lobby, parking, the game room, I like it. The elevator, laundry room, tennis court. Gym, parking, there's our playground. What about, ooh, the dog park? There you go. What about like a clubhouse, for example? Anything that's a part of that community that anybody has access to, that's what we're referring to as common areas. So they're managed by the homeowners association, but they're owned by the unit owners as tenant in common. That's what makes it hybrid. You have two different forms of ownership going on here. With condominium ownership, there may be exclusive rights to limited common elements. So maybe there's, you have your own storage building, or maybe you have assigned parking. You have access to those limited elements. we have something called the North Carolina Condominium Act of 1986. The North Carolina Condominium Act of 1986 applies to new construction condominiums. The first sale of the unit. It does not apply to resales, just the first sale of the unit. And the North Carolina Condominium Act says that the developer has to have the final map, plat map, plans, bylaws, everything finalized and on record before they can close on the first unit. Guys, bottom line, a buyer deserves to know what they're buying. Would you want to buy property with a preliminary bylaw? Would you want to buy property if they're still trying to determine the rules and the regulations and restrictions? Probably not. So to protect the owners, the developer has to have everything finalized and recorded before they can close on the first property. We can go under contract with preliminary, but we can't go to closing until we have final and recorded. The developer also needs to provide purchasers with a public offering statement before they go under contract. And that public offering statement is going to tell them the ownership, how it's structured, how it's going to be managed. And with a new construction condominium, the purchaser of a new construction, brand new construction condominium has 7 days to rescind the contract, which means once they go under contract, they have 7 days to cancel it. Within 7 days, they can take their contract back. If they put down any deposits, they'll get their money back. When you rescind a contract, you cancel it. Both parties go about their business as if this contract never happened to begin with. You cancel the contract, you get your deposit back. Again, this only applies to new construction, the first sale of the unit. When it comes to resales of a condominium, there is no right to cancel. There is no right to rescind. Once you get that first sale, anything after that, the second owner, the third, so on, that's a resale, and they don't have that right to rescind. But they still have the right to know about the condo. They still have to be provided with the resale certificate, which is similar to that public offering statement. Tells them about management structure, what the dues are, assessments, all that good stuff. Questions on condos? Another type of hybrid form of ownership that we don't see this much in North Carolina. Something called a cooperative ownership, also known as a co-op. With a co-op, you don't own property. You don't have ownership. With a co-op, you purchase stock. You have personal property. And by purchasing that stock, that gives you the right to live there. That gives you the right to occupy. You don't own it. You just buy stock. That proprietary lease is an occupancy agreement. Wow, I could not say that. It would save my life this morning when we were talking about that class. It just kind of fell right out nicely right now, though, didn't it? Your proprietary lease is just your occupancy agreement. Co-ops are more common. Think of our bigger, older cities. You see these a lot in like New York, Boston, Philadelphia. I've only heard of one of these in Charlotte. Can't tell you where it is or what it's called. But we just don't see much of this in North Carolina. So you don't own real estate. You have stock. By purchasing that stock, you can live there. Another hybrid form of ownership is townhomes. Townhomes are sometimes referred to as row houses because they just connect one after another after another. They're connected by a party wall. Townhome owners own a little bit of land. Townhome owners own the air above. With a townhome ownership, the common areas are owned and managed by the HOA. Do we see a big difference, another big difference in townhome and condo? With a condo, remember we said the common areas are managed by the HOA, owned by the people, right? With townhomes, they're owned and managed by the HOA. And townhomes are not covered under the North Carolina Condominium Act because they're not condos. They're townhomes. So there is no resale. There is no 7-day recession. Again, they have an HOA. They're going to replace the roof. They're going to replace the roof on all the units. They'll do a special assessment spelled out in the covenants, the bylaws. They all have rules and regulations. I remember Unit 6, we're going to talk all about covenants. So we'll see that. So townhomes are sometimes called row houses, one after another, after another, after another. Another form of hybrid forms of ownership is a timeshare. You guys ever heard of a timeshare? Timeshare ownership, you have multiple purchasers that own one unit. Typically with a timeshare, you have the right to occupy your unit, for example, 1 week out of the year. That means you own that unit with what, 51 other people. It's not like you can just show up anytime you want to. You have your designated time, your designated period that you're allowed to go visit, stay in your property. Question came in, can homes like a co-op or a timeshare be inherited? Of course, as long as they're not a life estate, right? Could you create a life estate on a townhome? Yeah. Co-op, remember, is not real property, it's personal property. So we're kind of putting that off in a different, because you don't own those. One of the distinguishing characteristics of a timeshare says the right to occupy a unit during at least 5 or more separate time periods over at least 5 years. I don't care what you call it. If it fits the definition of the second bullet point, it's considered a timeshare and it will follow the Timeshare Act. So if it's a vacation property or a resort, doesn't matter what you call it. If it meets the definition of the right to occupy during at least 5 or more separate time periods over at least 5 years, it's a timeshare. So if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a timeshare. I don't care what you call it. Another question about the owner, the co-op, does the developer, yeah, the developer or whoever they sold it to, they own the whole property. One owner. So at least 5 or more separate time periods over at least 5 years makes it a timeshare. With a timeshare, there's a 5-day recession period, which means when the buyer goes under contract, when the buyer signs that contract, they have 5 days to rescind their contract, take it back, get their deposits back. Timeshares don't have the best reputations, you guys. There's been some shady sales tactics. There, I said it. Some people have felt that they've been duped into these timeshares. So the whole point of this 5-day recession period, historically, some timeshare salespeople use pressure tactics, sign here, sign now kind of thing. But this idea, this 5-day recession period, is to give people time to think about it. It eliminates those pressure sales tactics. So with the timeshare, there's a 5-day recession period. And the developer of the timeshare has an escrow account, and they have to keep your deposit in the escrow account for 10 days. If the contract's rescinded, they have that deposit they can give back to you from their escrow account. After 10 days, then they can transfer it from their escrow account to their operating account and do with it as they choose. I'm going to talk all about the escrow account. We're also going to talk a little bit more about the Timeshare Act. As a matter of fact, the Timeshare Act is like the very last thing that we talk about in this class. So we'll see this again, end of February, something like that. The big thing you need to know about a timeshare. Why don't you guys do it? Why don't you guys push back from I'm going to have you move your hands a little bit. So push back. I don't want you to punch your computer. So push back a little bit. Stand up if you want to. Maybe move the blood flowing around a little bit. What you guys need to know, I'm going to do it and then we're going to do it together. Okay. What you guys need to know about a timeshare. What distinguishes a timeshare? What calls it a timeshare? 5, 5, 5, 10, jazz hands. All right. Y'all ready to do it with me? Let's go. What makes a timeshare? 5, 5, 5, 10, jazz hands. You want to do that one more time? That was fun. 5, 5, 5, 10, jazz hands. Okay, that's what makes us a timeshare. That's what makes it a timeshare, because it has our 5, 5, 5, 10. I just threw the jazz hands in for fun. That doesn't make it a timeshare. The other thing I want to say about a timeshare, we're going to talk a lot more about the Real Estate Commission as we go, but typically the Real Estate Commission can't fine a licensee. A timeshare is the exception. The timeshare is the only time that the Real Estate Commission can fine, and in this case, it would be the developer. And the Real Estate Commission has the authority to fine a timeshare developer up to $500 per violation. All timeshare salespeople have to be licensed. The timeshare project has to be registered. They have certain rules that they have to follow, of course. For the rest of us that are not timeshare salespeople, we can't be fined by the Real Estate Commission. They could take our license. They could discipline our license. We'll talk more about disciplinary action when we get into Unit 7. But unless you're in timeshares, the Real Estate Commission can't fine you. They can only fine a timeshare developer. Questions about our hybrid forms of ownership: co-op, townhome, condo. It's hybrid because you have multiple things going on. The last thing we're going to say in Unit 2, we're going to wrap this up and then we'll take a break. The last thing we're just going to mention is a trust. Trusts are sometimes set up to avoid probate. Probate is the reading of the will after an individual passes away, and sometimes probate can get ugly. So sometimes people choose, instead of doing a will and having their loved ones go through probate, sometimes they set up a trust to handle their estate after they pass away. So there's 3 parties involved in a trust. There's the grantor, who's the person that's giving the trust. There's the trustee, who's the person that's managing the trust, will be an attorney. And then there's a beneficiary who benefits when the grantor passes away. but the trustee is set up to manage on behalf of the beneficiary. Again, the whole point is just to try to avoid probate. Sometimes that gets long and drawn out and costly and nasty. So it could possibly be a way to avoid it. Questions? Trustee, probably not an executor of a will. Trustee is going to be an attorney. Yeah, an executor could be anybody, right? They could be any family member, but a trustee specifically is going to be an attorney. All right, we did it. 2 down. When you're reflecting on unit 2, ask yourself, what did I learn? What was my aha moment? What is it that Julie said that I just didn't get? Spend some time reflecting on unit 2. You got your key terms back on page 20. Your key point review, your Cliffs Notes, your abbreviated version on pages 43 and 46. And then you got your quiz, end of unit quiz on pages 47 to 49. Yes, ma'am, Lexi. I think you're on mute.
There we go. I have a question. So does it override the contract between tenant of God, we just talked about it. Hold on, let me go look at my notes. Does it override the joint tenancy or the other one with the married couple? I just forgot it.
Tenancy by the entirety, married couple.
Yeah,
yeah. Are you referring to the right of survivorship? Usually not, right? Because right of survivorship, the will doesn't matter with right of survivorship. So if this spouse passes away and this one's still standing, they still own the property. Now, when this spouse passes away, they may have their interest in a trust. Okay. Right? Unit 2, how we feeling? How we doing? Everybody good? Ish? We're going to study this weekend? Are we going to talk about what we've talked about so far? Yeah. Are we going to look ahead for what we're going to talk about next week? You bet. I wish I saw more heads bobbing up and down, but I'm sure you're nodding inside, right? All right, let's go ahead and take our break. I will take 10, and when we come back, we're going to do a little math introduction. So we're going to do a little bit of math when we get back. So let's take 10. Right. Here for the last hour? Anybody in for the last hour? Some thumbs ups? Cool. Cool, cool, cool. If you can hear me, make sure your camera's on. Not sure? Look up. Do you see a light? See a light? Your camera's on. If not, turn your light on. Turn your camera on. All right, so let's take attendance real quick. We're gonna get, we actually start getting into the math next week. So when we meet next week, our first big math section is at the end of Unit 3. But what I want to do right now, excuse me, is just kind of take a minute and do a little math introduction, kind of introduce you to just some things that we can expect to see. So some of us like math, some of us don't. I get it. I'm a math nerd, self-proclaimed math nerd. Anybody with me? Where are my fellow math nerds? Come on, I know you're out there. I know I'm not alone. A couple of you, thank you. You know what I can't do? I can't spell. I cannot spell to save my life. I can do math. That's how my brain is wired. If math is not your thing, you may need to work a little bit harder. If math is your thing, I still need you guys to practice. As we go through class, as we go through this math, can we help each other, Danielle? Is that what you're saying? The two of us could would make a great team, right? So as we go through this class and we go through math, I'm going to have lots and lots of practice for you guys. One thing you're probably going to be sick and tired of hearing me say is, when it comes to the math, practice, practice, practice. Guys, for some of you, it's going to look really easy to watch me do it, but it's different when you try to do it on your own. And you know what I can't do when you're taking your exams? I can't be there with you. So we'll go through, we'll do math together, but I always want you guys to practice. There's plenty of practice, and I explain it as we go. So just put your pencils down for a few seconds. You guys write so much. I swear you guys make my hand hurt. So just put your pencils down for a second and let's just sit back and take this in. Let's just kind of talk about some ideas that we're going to expect to see in our upcoming classes. So we deal with percentages in this class. And when we talk about percentage, a percent just means per 100. So for example, if we say 5% of the homes on the street are yellow, that just means 5 out of every 100 houses are yellow. 5% is per 100. Okay. For those of you that don't do math, one of the things that I hear on a regular basis is the word problems. And I get it. We don't read math, do we? We do math. So trying to take it from a word problem to a formula or a calculator or something we can work with. And so we want to try to pull out some of the words from the word problem that help us put it into math language, math formula. So when you're reading word problems, when you see the word of, that's just a fancy way of saying multiply. So start learning how to interpret and dissecting these test questions a little bit, looking for these key words like of. So for example, 350,000 times 25% is the same thing as saying 25% of 350,000. Okay. You guys take your chat right now and set it to a direct message. When we do math and I ask for answers, I only want you to answer me. Okay, I don't want you to answer everybody. And I'll tell you why in just a minute. So tell me in a direct message, what is 25% of 350,000? Direct message. The reason I asked you guys when we work math together in class, the reason I asked you to send me a direct message is twofold. One, I don't want you guys to be embarrassed to answer. I want to hear from all of you when we're doing math, but I don't want you to be so worried about, oh, it might be wrong. So what if it's wrong? This is how we learn. Let's be wrong now so we can work the kinks out for our exam, right? So if your answer is wrong, that's okay. You and I are the only ones that are going to know about that. And hopefully that'll help you learn, help you get the math better. The other reason I want you to send me a direct message is because I know some of you. And if we did a message to everybody, some of you would sit there and wait to see what everybody else is saying and say, oh yeah, that's my answer too. And if you're not doing it, you're not getting it, right? So I'm like dual purpose here. And I think as I'm seeing the numbers going up, I'm liking everything that I see for the answers. So if you haven't been calculator shopping yet, please remember to get your calculator. If you need to use your phone tonight, that's fine. If you need to use your phone tonight, that's fine. I'm okay with that. Go calculator shopping this weekend. The sooner you start using your calculator, the more practice you have and the better prepared you are for it on test day. Guys, this calculator isn't near as smart as this calculator. This calculator is really, really smart. But guess what? You can't use this one on your test. So this is why I want you getting this one like this weekend. Diane?
All right, I'm gonna be that person. There might be tears when it comes to math with me.
That's okay.
How do you get 25% of 350? Because I have no idea how to even work that out.
Yep.
Okay.
Nope, we're getting there. We're getting there. Yep. So on your not smart calculator, right? This is why I want you guys using this now. On your not smart calculator, how do we solve for this? You guys enter 350,000 and then say times 2.5 and then hit your percent key. So we said 350,000 times 2.5%. And what did we get? 87,500. What is 25% of 350,000? One thing that I'm sorry, Lexi, I didn't see. Yeah. I think you're on mute.
I was going to ask a question. I have a calculator from college, and it's a TI 87, TI 83. One of them. We're not allowed to use those on the test.
Nope,
just a basic
formulas, doesn't it? Yeah. So I need something not on your phone and something that can't store formulas, which is why we're emphasizing very basic 10 key. Okay. Yeah, Claire.
So I may be dating myself, but when I learned it in elementary school, it was just, so 350,000 times 0.25. If you don't have a percentage on your calculator.
So that leads me into my next point. To convert percentage to rate, we just move our decimal over 2 places. So some of you said 350,000 times 25%. Some of you said 350,000 times 0.25 equals. You know what? No matter how you did it, you get the same answer, right? 25% is the same as 0.25. Let me tell you guys something. Back in the day when we were in person, when we were standing, we could actually touch each other if we wanted to. When we taught math, this is how I always taught it. And back in the day when we were in person, I would look at you guys and say, all right, what if I were to tell you, let's all jump up, run out to our cars and go to the mall? Could we all agree that there's more than one way to get to the mall? Some of you will jump on the highway. Some of you will go down the main road. Some of you may take a back road and hit a dead end and have to turn around and come back, right? Does any of that matter? Does how you get to the mall matter? No, what matters is that you get to the mall. I don't care how you get there. It makes no difference to me whatsoever. As long as you get to the mall, that's our objective. So Clara, if you saw 0.25, you did the same thing, right? You got the right answer. So as long as you get the right answer, I don't care. I try to show you guys a couple different ways to do it when we can, because I understand that our brains see it differently. You know what somebody said this morning? They took 350,000 and divided by 4. That's how their brain saw it. You know what answer they got? 87,500. Guys, remember, your exam is multiple choice, A, B, C, or D. It's not like you're filling in the blank, which means when it comes with math, you have the right answer looking at you. A, B, C, or D. Okay, so, and again, we're going to deal with converting percentages to decimals and back and forth. So is everybody good with me there? 25% is the same as 0.25. Do one or the other. Do I have everybody so far? Which one do you like? Your preference? Go with it, however your brain sees it.
And Julie, when you say 25%, you're basically just saying pressing that percent key on the calculator. As simple
That's
as
right.
that, rather than pushing the decimal.
That's right. 25%. So you do one or the other. 25% or 0.25 equals. I don't care which one you do. Get to it another way. I don't care. What's our objective? To get to 87,500. That's right, to get to the mall. There's no wrong way to get to the mall. As Diane indicated, Diane, I appreciate you sharing that. Sometimes there are tears between here and the mall. It's okay to cry. It's okay. Get up, dust yourself off, and try it again. You're going to make mistakes. Guys, that's how you learn. I think sometimes you guys are so afraid of making a mistake, you just don't try. That doesn't change the fact that there's math on your end of class exam and your state exam. So let's work all the kinks out now with all of our practice. You guys get used to me saying that. Work out all those kinks now so you're not crying on the state exam. So you're not crying on the end of class exam. Okay? When it comes to math, this is a judgment-free zone. Nobody's here to judge. Nobody's here to critique. We all come into this with different strengths, different weaknesses, and we recognize and appreciate what each other brings to the table. Some of us can bring math. Some of you bring spelling. Some of you are artistic. Some of you are musical, right? We all bring something to the table. So, still set on private chat, just to me. I'll put this up. You guys take a minute and look at it, and then let me know in a private message what you think that answer is. I love it when you guys answer with a question mark. Like, are you telling me or are you asking me? Okay. When you guys see a math problem, just slow down for a minute. When you guys see a math problem, I actually want you reading the math problem 3 times. The first time you see a math problem, just read the problem. Don't pick up your pencil. Don't pick up your calculator. Just read. Put your hands on sit on your hands if you have to. But just read and ask yourself, what's the problem asking me? What does the problem want to know? Remember earlier I talked about distractors? You know where they really, really like to put distractors? Is in math problems. They will give you more information than what you need. Why? They're trying to distract you. They're trying to throw you off the track. How do you stay on track? You keep your focus on what is the question asking you. So the very first thing we do is just read. Lane sells her home for $250,000, pays her real estate agent's firm a commission of 5% of the sales price. What is the total commission paid? If there was a lot more information in this problem, the only thing I care about is finding total commission paid. So if I have information that doesn't get me to there, it's called a distractor. Knowing the formula is like 80% of the battle. If you don't know what the formula is, you don't know what to do with all those numbers that you're looking at. Okay, so we've read the problem, so now we can solve it. So what do? On our calculator, we say 250,000 times 5% or 0.05, move that decimal over 2 places. We said the word of means something, right? So the commission is 5% of the sales price. What's the sales price? 250,000. So we took our 250,000 times 5%, and how much commission are we getting? 12,500. What does that commission mean? We're going to talk about your commission in Unit 8. Don't run out and start spending money on me just yet, right? We'll talk about commission when we get to Unit 8. So the first time through, you're just reading. The second time through is when you're putting pencil to paper, you're picking up your calculator. Y'all stop staring at a blank piece of paper, waiting on numbers to magically appear. They don't do that, right? Put pencil to paper and do something. Once you think you have an answer, I want you to go back and read the problem again to make sure the answer you have is what they're looking for. Okay, so we're focusing only on what the question's asking me. If those numbers don't get me to that X, to that unknown variable, then it's a distractor and I don't care about it. I'm going to introduce you guys to my favorite math tool. Anybody that spent a minute with me knows I'm a big fan of something called the T-bar. Let me give you guys just a few minutes to write this down. Please write this down, and then we're going to talk about what it means. So let's talk about what all this means. Well, I'm such a fan of the T-bar, and hopefully I can convert you. That's my whole objective of this class, is I want T-bar fans by the end of class. I may even have some by the end of Unit 3. So when we look at the T-bar, we're actually looking at 3 variables. There's the part, the whole, and the percent or the rate. I'll talk about the part and the whole in just a second. Here's the good news when it comes to T-bar. Just about every time, not every time, but just about every time you're reading a word problem and you see the word percent or rate, we can use a T-bar. We're going to use a T-bar. It's, of my opinion, if you can get the T-bar, you got a good chunk of this math. So you read a T-bar, you read the problem, you see percent or rate, and we can throw a T-bar down. When you're filling in your T-bar, the percent or the rate always goes in the bottom right. Did you guys just hear my absolute word? The rate or the percent always goes in the bottom right. That takes the guesswork out of that. Where does the percent go? Where does the rate go? Julie said it always goes in the bottom right. That's one variable down. So now we got two other variables, the part and the whole. Generally, when I'm looking at two other numbers, the part is going to be smaller than the whole. So for example, if we're talking about commission, which number is smaller, commission or sales price? Which number is smaller, commission or sales price? Well, unfortunately for us, commission is smaller than sales price, right? So when you're filling in your T-bar, we know that the commission goes on top, sales price goes on the bottom right. So let's say, for example, you're reading a problem and it tells you, of course, I'm abbreviating here, that the commission is $3,000. The commission percentage is 3%. And the problem asks you, what is the sales price? I've read this problem. I see rate or percent. So my immediate thought is to throw down a T-bar. Where did Julie say the rate or the percent always goes? It always goes in the bottom right. That's the easy one. Don't even think about that. Rate or percent always goes in the bottom right. Now I have commission and I have sales price. Remember we just said, which number is bigger, which number is smaller? Commission's less than sales price. So commission goes on top. Sales price, which is our X, our unknown variable, goes on the bottom left. When you're looking at the T-bar, this back fourth line right here means divide. This up down line means multiply. So looking at the T-bar, it actually gives me three formulas. I can only solve for one X at a time, right? So if my unknown variable is the part, I take the whole times the percent equals the part. If my unknown is the whole, I take the part divided by the percent. Or if my unknown is the percent, I take the part and divide it by the whole. So my up down line, my back fourth line right here means divide. So how do I solve for X? On your calculator, take 3,000, divide by 3%. And what are we getting for sales price? 3,000 divided by 3%. And we're getting a sales price of Yep. 3,000 divided by 3% means I'm getting a sales price of 100,000. So what if you don't remember what number goes on top and what number goes on bottom left? Here's one of the reasons that I like the T-bar so much. You're in the heat of the test. You see this word problem. You know, because Julie said the rate or the percent always goes here. That's the easy one. Y'all don't make that harder than what it is. Rate or percent always goes in the bottom right. Okay. You're in the throes of the test and you cannot, does 3,000 go on top or does 3,000 go on bottom? My suggestion to you is to flip those numbers and work it both ways. What does the up down line mean? The up down line means multiply. What do you get when you take 3,000 times 3%? 3,000 times 3%. $3,000 times, so on your calculator, do 3,000 times 3% or 0.03. And when you multiply 3,000 times 3%, you get a sales price of $90. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to sell a house for $90 and get a commission of $3,000? Don't we wish? So by flipping those numbers, by doing it both ways, by doing something, by putting pencil to paper and doing something, you can easily, most of the times, rule out one of those answers. Rate of percent always goes in the bottom right. Guys, I've been doing math tutoring for pre-licensing for like, I'm coming up on 15 years, I think. Hands down, the number one question I get in math tutoring is, when do I divide and when do I multiply? And you know what my highly educated response to that is? Do it both ways and see what you get. You can waste precious test time thinking about what to do, or you can put pencil to paper and do something. And then stop and look at your answers. Which one makes more sense for a sales price? $100,000 or $90? So the T-bar, again, it gives you 3 formulas. You have choices. You can either work with me and learn the T-bar. We're going to start in Unit 3, or you can memorize the formulas. How do you solve for the part? How do you solve for the whole? How do you solve for percent? I don't care, as long as you get to them all. Remember, that's whole or objective. Get to them all. If you guys will, real quick, look with me in the back of your book. Remember last night we looked at that math facts section? Look with me, please, on page 786. $786, $787. They call it the X bar. I call it the T bar. Same thing. But there's a little explanation for you with some practice. Kind of get you working with the T bar. Again, we're going to start next week at the end of Unit 3 with our T bar. Huge fan. Give me a chance. You might be a huge fan of it too by the time we're done. If you do it your own way, fantastic. I don't care. Just get it right. But you're not going to get it right if you don't try. You're not going to get it right if you don't practice, practice, practice. It's really easy to watch me do it. The true test is, can you do it on your exams? So now, knowing what we know, our newfound knowledge of the T-bar, let's go back to the problem that we just looked at. We already know the answer. We've already worked this, but let's look at it now in our new T-bar. So Lane sells her home for $250,000, pays her real estate agent's firm a commission of 5% of the sales price. What is the total commission paid? I read the problem. I saw rate or percent, so I threw down a T-bar. Typically, when I do math, I like to start with where I want to end. What do I mean by that? When I'm doing math, the very first thing that I want to do is identify my X. Determine what I'm solving for, because that's the only thing that I care about. If there's information that doesn't get me to the X, then it's a distractor. I don't need it. So the question is asking me, what's my total commission? What number's smaller, commission or sales price? So the first thing I did was identify my X. I determined, what am I solving for? And now I can fill in the rest of what I know. Where do we put our rate or percent? Always goes in the bottom right. The other variable I have is the sales price. I've completed my T-bar, so now the only other thing I have left to do is solve for X. 250,000 times 5%. How much did we say that was? Is $12,500 commission. And that's the basis of the T-bar. Again, I think if you can get this, you can get a good chunk of this math. There are some formulas that you just have to memorize. When we get to those, I'll suggest that you make flashcards out of those formulas. I think, the best way to memorize them is to quiz yourself over and over and over again. I mean, bottom line, if you don't know the formula, you don't know what to do with those numbers, you might as well just move on. But we'll see some of those formulas as we go. Most of the math that we do, though, we can use the T-bar. Questions or comments? I'm going to get fans before we're over. I promise. Okay. So I mentioned earlier, as you guys are taking your practice quizzes, like the quizzes at the end of the unit and even in Learn, Test, Pass, I want you guys grading yourselves as you go. Because if you're not passing the quizzes at the end of each unit, how are you going to pass my exam? So you got to be gauging yourself as you go. And the way I like to tell you how to grade yourself is, oh yeah, we get to use a T-bar. So if you set your T-bar up, let's see the number on the bottom, in this case, this percent is going to be your score. That's going to be what we're solving for. The number on top is going to be the number you got right. The number in the bottom is the total number of questions. So how can you be gauging yourself? How can you be grading yourself? Well, you get to use the T-bar. What am I solving for? What I want to know is, what is your score? How did you do on this quiz? And just because I'm here, let's look at the end of unit quiz, the end of unit 2 on page 49. Total number of questions on the unit 2 quiz, there are 25 questions. So let's say you take this quiz and you get 19 of them right. What's your score? How do you determine your score? The back fourth line means divide. So you take 19 divided by 25 gives you a score of 0.76. Move that decimal over 2 places to get 76%. Did you just pass the end of unit 2 quiz? Yeah, barely, but you did. If I were you guys, I would strive for an 80% to give yourself some wiggle room. All you need is a 75%. If you're shooting for the minimum, all you need is a 75%. So 76, you passed. I think you should give yourself some wiggle room. So if this were me, I'd go back through unit 2 and try to get a couple extra points. Try to bring my score up a little bit. Does that make sense to you guys? You take the number you got right, divide it by the total number of questions, and that'll give you your score. Guys, there should be no surprises on test day. If you're gauging yourself, if you're grading yourself as you go, there should not be any surprises. Diane, did I see your hand?
Yeah, I was just wondering, how are we supposed to know if we got it right?
So the answers are in the back of the book,
Oh,
starting on page 861. So Learn, Test, Pass, the answers are there. There's some interactive questions that'll grade for you. There's also some flat PDF quizzes, but they have the answers with them for you to look at after the fact. Studying the answers doesn't do you any good, right? Try it first and see how you're doing. Fair enough? Any other questions, comments, concerns? Again, when we come back together on Thursday, when we get into unit 3, we're going to get into our first map. So this is why I wanted to do this now. Give you guys something to think about, look at, study, whatever page I just said in the back of the book this was on. Okay. Everybody good? Can I erase this? Everybody good? Okay. And remember, you'll have the recording probably by the time you wake up tomorrow morning. So if you want to go back through, did I say Thursday? Don't listen to me. Just look at the schedule. Whenever we meet again. How about that? Thank you. The other thing I want to share with you guys real quick before we get started on Unit 3, we're going to do an introduction on Unit 3. But the Unit 2 material and Learn, Test, Pass, as you guys are going through this, again, I just mentioned there's interactive quizzes. So you answer like here, you know, and then answer, and then it'll tell you if you got it right or wrong. All good practice. There's that concurrent forms of ownership chart that I mentioned that I think is good for you guys to pay attention to when you're studying. By the time we get to the end of February, this conversation is going to seem like a thing way in the past. So use this chart to help you refresh the concurrent forms of ownership. The other thing I want to point out to you guys, the Real Estate Commission provides Q&A brochures on various topics, and I've snagged them and included in pre-licensing. Remember, the Real Estate Commission's main purpose is to protect the public. And one way they can protect the public is by helping to educate the public. And one way they're educating the public is by creating these Q&A brochures. So for example, this is one on condos and townhomes. Understand it's geared towards the buyer, but I think it helps you guys too to look at it, help you better wrap your brain around this information. So please, please, please be going through Learn, Test, Pass as we go along. There really is good information and things to help you guys better grasp it and better understand it. And then remember, all of my PowerPoints are in here too. So if you're trying really hard to write down every single word, all that's already here. It's all here. Save your hand. I prefer you guys to be listening than trying to write down something that you already have. Does that make sense? Questions? Carol, can you send me an email request or text? Because I may not see this chat again until like tomorrow or something. So if you'll shoot me an email, I'll be happy to do that. Okay. All right. We move forward. We're going to get started on Unit 3 tonight. Obviously, we won't get through it. So we'll pick up on Tuesday, wherever we leave off tonight. Question came in about Learn, Test, Pass. Yeah, you log on and work through it at your own pace. Ideally, I'd like you guys to keep up with me, but you'll have it our entire time together. You'll have it afterwards. We'll talk later about how long you have Learn, Test, Pass. But yeah, use it as a study guide. Tools in there to help you succeed. So we're going to get started on Unit 3 tonight. Obviously, we won't get through it. Wherever we start tonight is where we'll pick up on Tuesday. Guys, please remember to study this weekend. Please remember, as you're studying, I'm here, and I'm here to help. So if you're stuck, never hesitate to reach out to me. Send me a text, send me an email. Say, Julie, can you help me? Julie, I'm stuck. I tell you guys right now, I do really good with pictures and screenshots. If I can see exactly what it is you're stuck on, that does help me. So send me an email, send me a text. I may not get back to you immediately, but I will get back to you. Believe it or not, I have other things going on besides this class 3 nights a week, right? So I will get back to you as soon as I can. But I can't help you guys if I don't know what you're struggling with. Okay, we're only 2 units in. So use this time. If you haven't read the first couple units yet, use this time to get yourself caught up. Next week, we'll do Unit 3. We'll do Unit 4. We'll do Unit 5. We may even get started in Unit 6. So in addition to reviewing what we've covered so far, look ahead at what we're going to cover next week. Be prepared for the discussions we'll have next week. Unit 3 is all about encumbrances. We're going to talk in just a second about what an encumbrance is, but everything in Unit 3 is an encumbrance on real property. So in Unit 3, we're going to identify types of encumbrances. We're going to talk about property taxation laws in North Carolina. All properties in North Carolina are subject to taxation. So we need to understand how that works. And then we're going to do our first bit of math. And our math includes calculating property taxes, your annual property taxes, that kind of thing. So first off, in Unit 3, what the heck is an encumbrance? An encumbrance is just anything that affects title to real estate. Every single property that I know of is encumbered by something. Encumbrances aren't necessarily good. They're not necessarily bad. They just affect the title to real estate. An encumbrance is a right or an interest by somebody that's not the owner. So everything we talk about in Unit 3 for the next 10 minutes or so tonight, picking back up next Tuesday, is going to be a encumbrance. It's something that affects the title. The first type of encumbrance that we have is a lien. When you guys see lien, I want you to see the word loan. If you have a lien on your property, you owe somebody some money. And how are they protecting their right to collect money from you? They're putting a lien on the property. A lien is a non-possessory charge against a property that provides security for the person that you owe money to. It enables them to collect from the owner. When do they collect? Before the owner can convey their property, before they can sell it to somebody else, they have to clear these liens. They have to pay off all those liens. So if you have a lien on your property, it's because you owe somebody some money. See lien, see the word loan. And we got two types of liens. The first lien are specific liens. Specific liens are specific to that property. They attach to the property. A specific lien is specific to 123 Main Street, for example. It's specific to that property. A specific lien that most people have on their property is the deed of trust, which in North Carolina, we're awfully fancy. And the deed of trust is what we call our mortgage. If you're getting financing to purchase the home, if you're putting a second mortgage or a third mortgage, if you're going through a lender, that lender will put a lien on the property to make sure they get paid if you sell it. So deed of trust is just a mortgage. I'm going to talk all about mortgages and financing when we get into units 14 and 15. So we'll see these again. Real property taxes are specific lien. Every single property in North Carolina is subject to taxation. We all owe the government money to live here. Real property taxes, unpaid real property taxes will create a lien. Special assessments imposed by the government, unpaid special assessments imposed by the government. There are two kinds of special assessments. Those are those put on by the government, those put on by an HOA. Talk about HOA special assessments later. Government special assessments can create a lien. Why would the government put a special assessment on your property? Well, maybe they're installing street lighting. Maybe they're hooking an entire neighborhood up to public sewer. Special assessment, anytime you're making some kind of improvement to the property. So if the government is improving the property, they may put a special assessment on the owners. A mechanics lien is a special lien. Hang on to mechanics lien for just a minute. We'll talk about that in just a minute more in depth. So we'll come back to that. And then another example of specific lien is the North Carolina commercial real estate broker. There may be an opportunity for a commercial broker to put a lien on a property to protect their commission. Unfortunately, this only applies to commercial, not to residential. If you're a commercial broker and you want to put a lien on a property, you need to get an attorney involved. You can't just go do it yourself. So you got an attorney involved to put that lien on the property for you. Real property taxes and government special assessments are known as superior liens. Superior liens are always paid first. The government's the one that makes the rules. The government's the one that makes sure they get paid first. Makes perfect sense to me. If I made the rules, you know who I would make sure got paid first? Me. So the government has superior liens, which means taxes and government special assessments will always be paid first. How's everybody else paid? There's something called lien priority. How do these lien gets recorded? Liens are recorded. They're put on notice. They're put on public record. I wish I could tell you guys sometimes that there isn't such thing as a shady seller or a seller that lies. So how can we help protect your interest? How can we help you get your money? We put it on public record. So before the shady seller can sell their property, we're making sure that they have those liens paid off, as opposed to asking the seller, do you have any money on the property? And the seller goes, nuh-uh. So we put things on record to protect the new owner, to protect the person that's going to purchase the property. Guys, the seller can't convey the property until they have all their liens paid off. And the closing attorney, we'll talk about this in Unit 5, but the closing attorney will perform a public record search. This is part of what they're looking for. They're looking for any of these unpaid liens. So the seller can take care of them before the buyer, now the new owner, gets their brand new deed. So in Unit 5, we're going to talk about recording. We're going to talk about deeds. We're going to talk about title. We're going to talk about I call that our attorney's title. We're going to talk about that part of it that the attorney does. Yeah, Danielle?
You just answered it. You said we're going to talk about it later. I'll wait.
Okay. Hit me up this weekend if you can't. If you're just, okay. So with this being said, I think I'm going to stop today. When we come back on Tuesday, we'll start here. I'll kind of refresh this, and then we're going to spend some time talking about some mechanics liens. So we'll talk more about that. They do follow a different set of rules. So we need to make sure that we're clear on that. So we'll pick back up here on Tuesday and talk more about that. Do I have any questions before you guys go anywhere? Do I have any questions? Anything? Am I froze? You guys here?
We can hear you, Julie.
You can hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you.
You're in, hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Y'all are frozen on my end. So as long as you can see me, that's okay. So all I want to do now is say good night. I hope you guys have a great weekend. And I will see everybody on Tuesday. Let me know if I can help. Don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Have a good
We'll see you guys on
weekend.
Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
You
I still
too.
can't see you guys.